You've played alongside and with many of the great lady champions of the world. But let's talk specifically about Annika Sorenstam and Lorena Ochoa.
You know, people don't understand about Annika. She played alongside of us for 8 or 9 years and didn't do anything. So we knew her at a time that she just was an average tour player. Well, how can any tour player be average to be out there? People don't realize how good you have to be. 140 in the world can play only one tour. But she never won that much. She just was a middle of the road kind of player. And something clicked. And I saw her and played with her my final year. And the difference was she turned it up a notch. She got longer. She got fitter. We used to hit the ball about the same distance, and I noticed she had increased her driving average of about 15 more yards than me, but her short game had improved immensely. And I said to her, I said, this is so great to see because we both hit the same amount of greens. I shot 74, you shot 68. I said, there's the difference. You've improved your short game and you're going to go on to win many events. And she just rose and became unbeatable. And it happens, you know how it is, Dale, when you finished leading Order of Merit, you get on a rhythm that you feel like you just play and you don't think about not winning. And we've been there a few times, haven't we, like Annika?
She's a very mentally tough lady. Lorena Ochoa seemed more naturally talented perhaps than Annika.
Wonderfully so. A very odd swing. I played with Lorena in Arizona. She was playing for Arizona State. It was her last year, and she was an amateur. And I played our first round together, first two. And she was about 18 at the time. And we finished, she played beautifully. Shot about 2 under. And I came off the green and we were chatting and her parents came up, 2 lovely people, and they said to me, you know, what do you think about our daughter as far as her ability and what would you change? And I said, number one, nothing. And just let her compete. She is a natural style, don't change that move because you'll get into a lot of trouble. It's her natural move. I've never seen anyone so tiny. Dale, she's tiny in the sense her frame, and she was quite short, hit it as far as anybody.
Now you're talking about tiny. The next thing was the Koreans all took over. I mean, they've just had so many wonderful players.
Different story there, you know. I remember about 20 years ago, David Ledbetter telling me about you're going to see what's going to be coming. And he had been coaching quite a lot of these youngsters. And I didn't realize this, but in 1993, Samsung sent Phil Ritson, our great Phil Ritson from South Africa, to Korea to start coaching the coaches. Their coaches over there for 3 years. And Phil then said to David, listen, you got to see what's coming because the ladies are being coached because the men are having to go to army. So they were doing military training, so they had to wait it out. So they started training these young women. And he said, their discipline, they're going to take over the world. And sure enough, that's what happened to the LPGA Tour.
You know, you've just actually reminded me why you won majors and I didn't, because I had to go to the army. Must have been that. Your golf swing has been admired by people for the last 40 years. You had an upright swing, you had lovely rhythm, and yet you created a lot of power. Any things that you'd like to change about your swings? What were the sort of thoughts that went through your mind when you played your best golf?
No thoughts at all. I had such freedom. You know, it's funny. We are all wanting to change to get better. I mean, I always strived to want to be a bit better, and most of the time working on the wrong things. And my golf swing was really honed in the sense by my father. My dad was such a great technocrat in the sense that he studied the golf swing, still as an amateur, but he read everything. And he said to me when he started working with me and starting to teach me the fundamentals, he said to me, I never want you to read a golf book, ever. You'll get too confused. He said, you play so much with feel. And he said, you have your basics, you have such good fundamentals. The only time you're going to get into trouble is when you get off base with them. And he wrote a book for me from the age, I have this little book. And when you get older, and I think one of my biggest faults in the sense of messing with my golf swing was when I went to the States and I thought I needed to get better. And I thought I needed to practice more. And my swing was so natural, the only thing I should have been practicing was my short game, my putting, my chipping. But I wanted to work because the Americans work so hard. Beating golf balls was my biggest detriment. I play better without. We all are different. We all are made differently. And I found if I didn't play as much or hit balls as much, I played better.
It's funny you say that because Harold Henning was exactly the same. Harold also believed that, he didn't need to practice as hard as Gary Player or some of the guys that really worked hard. And it certainly worked for him as well. We've got now a group of South Africans that are playing on the international tours. Ashley Simon, Leanne Pace, Stacey Bregman, and one or two others. What are your feelings about them?
Well, I've watched them from a distance. Dale, I have not really had any involvement with them at all. Haven't really worked on their swings or helped them with anything. But they've been out there now quite a while. I mean, Leanne Pace has done very well. She's been out on tour for a number of years. She's done very, very well. It's a very, very difficult life. People think, coming from here with all this talent, you're going to take on the world. It's a different lifestyle. And as you mentioned earlier, for women or girls going out is a lot harder than for boys, and I think it is. But we as South Africans also are different. And you go into this big world, you need to have a pretty solid foundation. And for me, if I was to talk to any of these youngsters, they got to go to college. They must have something to fall back on. In our years, it wasn't so. But every youngster, you must have an education to fall back on that, only 1% in the world play golf at that level. And you got to understand that things happen where you might not be on tour. And at least you have this education. And these kids here must understand that they need more international experience before they turn professional.
It's interesting you mentioned that, it is a tough life. And I mean, just a simple thing like going to dinner. A guy can go to dinner on his own. It's more difficult for a girl to do that. If you'd had a child, a girl or a boy, would you encourage them to play on the tour?
Depending on their personality. I would encourage them to play the game I love, but it takes an incredibly strong, disciplined personality to live that lifestyle, and especially for having longevity in the sport. But I look at golf, I think why I played so long and I played it at such a high level, I loved it. It was my ballet. It was my form of expression. And when I mentioned earlier that I wasn't as competitive all the time, it was like my safety valve, that I could get to where I was comfortable to win. And I felt if I could play at that really high level and be within 10 shots of the number one, for the week I could win, so I wouldn't have all the press. I had a hard time dealing with all of the press all the time, so I kept in the background. That suited my personality. So I found my way, but a lot of kids don't have a solid foundation and they lose their way out there. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, I look at what we have in this country, the talent we have. I'm looking from the female side. A male side is unprecedented, the talent that comes. But what's happening with our young women? There is so much talent. Why aren't they getting any better? So something's wrong here. So they're not being coached properly. They're not being taught the mental side of the game. And that's very frustrating to me because they have everything at their feet here, weather-wise, opportunity. So I don't know what needs to be changed, but something has to happen.